And when we're talking about relationships on the other side, I'd like to keep a couple things in mind. When we refer to people on the other side, let's keep in mind they're still people. They may be in spirit form, energy form, but they are still people, and personalities don't change. And the way I'm going to speak tonight is my own philosophy and is based on my own experiences from all of the readings I've done over the years, which thankfully we have a lot to pull from. So, and that, I chose this topic because I get asked this question a lot. And so that's why we wanted to talk about relationships on the other side. Okay, so I would first like to say that when we're thinking about the other side, let's try and not make it too complicated, too layered. We have life here. It is complicated. It is layered. But if you know who your family is, most of us, you know who your friends are, those dynamics. And that doesn't necessarily change on the other side. Just like you have free will here, who you spend time with, how you spend time with them, what events you go to, what you don't go to, you have that same free will on the other side. And it's really important to understand this, because I've had readings where people say, well, here, where the client will say, well, I have to be stuck with so-and-so. My father left when I was a child, and I never knew my father, and well, I have to be stuck with him on the other side because I don't want that. Well, the answer is no. Would you have the opportunity to meet and have a conversation and perhaps work things out if you wanted to? Yes. But do you have to? No. Just like you don't here. I will say, I often find that people do come through from the other side to explain their point of view, express why they were the way they were, for the hopes of healing these relationships. But again, you do have free will on the other side. And when we talk about relationships on the other side, what exactly are we speaking about? Because there are so many levels of relationships. So you have your family, of course, that you were born into. Your family will include a family that you're married into, because sometimes they will join with us as well. It will also include step families, adopted families, whatever you consider to be family, biological family, that, we will often spend time with them. Friends, of course, relationships. Even if you were married to somebody here, they transitioned and you had another marriage, or you just had multiple marriages here, you may be with them on the other side as well. Our animal companions, they join us too on the other side, which I always think is the greatest thing, So when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about all relationships, mentors, teachers, and some of those, just like they would here, would come and go. And some people you'll find spend just a whole lot more time together on the other side. So, all right. So where I would like to go to now is some real life experiences that I have experienced as a medium with those on the other side. So I will give you some examples of how this may come to pass. And I always think, for me at least, this is my most favorite part, is because we get to pull from real experiences in a medium session. So some of the things that may have happened. I will share with you, there was a reading I was doing with a woman, and I connected her with her mother on the other side. And I noticed the mother had two men standing next to her. And what was different about this is normally we expect to see husband and wife together, but not always. But in this case, she had two men standing next to her. And it didn't feel like a brother relationship. So I said to the client here, I said, your mom has two men with her. I believe these to be both husbands. Is that right? And the client here acknowledged, yes, that was so. And she didn't find it surprising, because her father had passed and her mother had remarried, and her mother had good relationships with both men. And so, as you see, it was more on equal grounds. There was no competition, there was no strangeness. It was actually really a nice connection. So that's the ideal, of course, is that we want to, have it as nice as it can be. Now, another scenario I had, I read for a lot of women, actually. I would love more men to get involved with readings. But again, I was reading for a woman, and her mother came through. Now, her mother came through on this side for me, and her father came through on this side, and they were not standing together. And I could pick up a hint of tension. And so I shared this with the client. I said, I see you have a mother on the other side. I see your father is on the other side as well, but they're not standing together. And based on a little bit of tension I'm picking up, I take it that they didn't have the best relationship while they were here. And the daughter laughed and said, that's exactly right. I would have never expected them to be together on the other side. Now notice, they weren't together, but because they did both come through for their daughter. And so it's just that they weren't standing next to each other. And the only way I can describe it was I could feel like a little waviness between the two of them. And so just based on that, I knew that they didn't spend time together. So that's just one example of perhaps not being the best scenario, right? But not unexpected. And we will find that in readings, because personalities don't change, it's not, their behavior on the other side, their personalities, the way they say things, that tends to be similar. So a lot of times things are not a surprise per se. So let's keep that in mind. That being said, again, many people make amends, many people work things out once they reunite with one another on the side, if they are ready to do so, if they choose to do so. See where I'm going so far? Everyone still with me? Okay, so let's touch on one that's a little bit more complicated. And this would be, I've had this scenario where I've read for somebody who was adopted and didn't know their biological family. And so their adopted family is their family, of course, right? And so it was interesting because I've had this more than once, where some biological members come through and I'm going to say the family because an adopted family is a family. So you had the biological parent come through, or grandparents, and the family member come through from the other side. And it can be challenging if somebody does not know about their biological family. But and I've had multiple readings where this has happened, where they knew just a little bit and enough for them to say, I can validate that enough. But what is amazing, there was one in particular that was really just touching and healing. And the biological mother came through and said, I had to give up, and it was a sacrifice for me. I've watched you since I've been over here on the other side. You've made me very proud. And then went on to explain why at the time she had to give up some of her children, which of course is a brave move, difficult move, challenging move. And while only so many things could be validated, the person I was reading for found a lot of comfort and understanding, and they had heard just a little bit. So it was enough for them to validate. So in this instance, the biological mother was coming through to explain why I did what I did as a way to offer a little bit of healing, and that is a really nice thing. I always really appreciate when people take that step to explain why they were the way they were in order to help us here. Because sometimes we don't know why people behave. We may not know about things that they lived with before. So, in that instance, will her adopted family and biological family be together on the other side? No. But will she have the choice to go and reunite with them if she wishes? Yes. This is based on my experience. I have seen it come through in many readings. Friends have come through, teachers have come through, mentors have come through. So, it's not limited to just our immediate family. I've even had people from the other side say, I've met up with a lot of people I never even met. And they've had a large family. Here, it's just that they didn't know them because they lived, distance. So it's really fascinating, really. But just keep in mind that like we have free will here, we have free will on the other side. So that would be the gist of it. And our animal companions, to just include that again, they can be with us. I have seen them be in a different area on the other side and with us. So again, they can kind of go to a different area. So let's keep all of that free will, in mind. Another thing to touch on before we go to Q&A, because I really like to answer as many questions as possible. I would like to reiterate, if you do not want to be with somebody and it is not in your best interest, you don't need to be. So a difficult example and a scenario all too common with many of us is if you had an abusive parent. On the other side, it's about love and support. It's about healing. It's about things being better for our soul. And so if you think about it and take it in that vein, then there's no need for you to be with someone on the other side who has been abusive. What is there to gain there? Now, if that individual who is abusive has done a lot of work and growth on the other side, and you choose to try and seek them out to bridge that and mend that, again, that would be up to you. I think it's really important to understand because, yes, we are all connected. And then I often think about there's some flexibilities within those connections, because if a scenario is not supportive of us here, then why would we assume that it's automatically going to change on the other side? Let's not leap to that conclusion. Yes, there's unconditional love for you on the other side. Yes, there's room for you to grow. Yes, there's plenty of things that you can do to explore and fulfill, and things that you didn't get to do while you were here even. So it's pretty wide open for what you would like to do. There's opportunity for you yourself to learn, grow, and heal, and get some of those questions answered that you couldn't do while you were here. So all of that is available to you. But that being said, once we transition, we do not automatically become saintly, and we do not automatically know everything. And so because I've had this question asked so many times, this is exactly why we wanted to do this webinar tonight. So me being me, I much prefer answering the questions that you all may have. Let's again try and keep it to tonight's topic and as broad as possible.